Welcome back to the weekly podcast. My name is Brian Strong, and I'll be your reporter. And we'll be talking about the stories that's happened in the last week or so. And I guess the big news is that the Trump administration has finally did a reversal on what he said when he was campaigning. Apparently, we still don't really know. It's so hard to tell. But anyway, here's what Trump said when he was running for president.
Go ahead.
What are you going to do for legalizing marijuana if people are willing to follow all of the rules 100% legally, federally, and
The marijuana thing is such a big thing. I think medical should happen, right? Don't we agree? I mean, I think so. And then I really believe you should leave it up to the states. It should be a state situation. Because, you have, like I just left Colorado, and I love Colorado, and the people are great. But there's a question as to how it's all working out there. That's not going exactly trouble-free. So I really think that we should study Colorado, see what's happening. But I believe that the legalization of marijuana, other than for medical, because I think medical, I know people that are very, very sick, and for whatever reason, the marijuana really helps them. But it really helps them. But I think in terms of marijuana, and legalization, I think that should be a state issue, state by state. Good question. Go ahead, over here.
Good answer. Really good answer. Very, very good answer. Very different than what this guy here says.
I'm dubious about marijuana. States, can pass whatever laws they choose, but I'm not sure we're going to be a better, healthier nation that if we have marijuana being sold at every corner grocery store. I just don't think that's going to be good for us.
Well, right away, I got to say, Mr. Sessions, it's probably not good for us right now to have a marijuana marketplace where, gangsters who sell other things are where you go to buy your marijuana. To have marijuana sold at every corner drugstore in America would actually be a healthy thing because it would be healthy for the economy. It would create jobs. It would be better for you guys, the cops, because then you would know where the marijuana activity's at as far as the sales of the marijuana goes. And since it would be legal, you guys wouldn't have to worry about, arresting anybody for it. So the cops wouldn't be in danger by, attempting to arrest somebody for something like marijuana, as harmless as it is. The less that cops have to confront somebody with the possibility of arresting them for a felony that's going to put them in prison for several years, the better. So you're just dead. You're flat wrong on the statement that we're not going to be a healthier or better country or whatever else you want to say about it with a marijuana store on every corner. We would be a much better off country.
We'll have to work our way through that. I'd see...
Well, how about we just have one on every other corner? Is that a good way to work our way through that?
A line in the Washington Post today that I remember from the 80s.
I think you remember everything from the 80s.
This one was, if you smoke, marijuana is a cure for opiate abuse.
He's waiting for the laugh line. That was supposed to be a joke. See how he's looking? He's looking like he's laughing. Like, aha, where's the laughing? That was supposed to be some kind of a punchline to a joke. That isn't no joke, Mr. Sessions. Real situations are happening all over this country today where real people are quitting the opioids, the opiates, the heroin, the pills, the fentanyl, the patches, the mouth sprays, the suckers, Dilaudid, like all this garbage. There's no way out when you're in that. What, you going to go to the methadone clinic? You going to take some Suboxone or something? You're still in it. Marijuana is a way out for people. And that's a scientific fact. It's demonstrably provable fact. And it happens every fucking day in this country. You know what else happens every day in this country? Unfortunately, is anywhere from 40 to 80 people per day die from opiate overdose deaths. Now, I've said this before. It's like taking just the pills, just the legal stuff that you can get from a doctor, is about 45 people a day. That's like driving a bus off of a cliff full of people every day. And these people come in all ages and sizes and shapes and colors. So that happens every day, man. And for you to sit here and joke about people getting off of opiates with marijuana, you are a fucking hypocrite. You're an asshole. And hey, listen, crickets on your fucking joke.
Give me a break. I mean, you know, this is the kind of argument that has been made out there to just almost a desperate attempt to defend the harmlessness of marijuana or even its benefits. I doubt that's true. Maybe science will prove I'm wrong, but at this point in time, you and I have a responsibility to use our best judgment.
Then your best judgment should tell you that this prohibition is the only problem with this marijuana situation. And, you know, your best judgment should tell you that all you got to do is look into this, man. I just seen 4 articles today about, you know, marijuana being a way out for opiate addicts. Opioid addiction can be, you know, helped greatly. We'll get into that later. Anyway, you know, you're talking about using your best judgment. 71% of the country say don't interfere with states that have legalized marijuana. 71%. If I was using my better judgment, I would definitely give a little bit more, consideration for the 71% of the country that thinks you're crazy. You're a batshit lunatic if you go after marijuana.
That which we've learned over a period of years and speak truth as best we can.
Okay, well, what we've learned over a period of 80 years is that prohibition of marijuana has not worked. You're locking up the citizens of this country. You're ruining their future with, records that say they have a felony for marijuana, whatever. And, if you're using that in the last 40 years, spent $2 trillion, locked up over 1 million people or more. I don't remember the exact number, but it's a lot. And you have nothing to show for it. What do you have to show for it? You don't have anything as the federal government standing there talking shit. You don't have nothing to show for it. You got marijuana is more potent than it was 40 years ago when they started the ramp up. They made the war on drugs. So you got the marijuana. It's more potent, more available. It's grown in this country now instead of imported from around the world. Everything you tried to do, eradicate it, whatever, none of it worked. You have nothing to show for. The only thing you have to show for is that the states in America are moving forward without you. So you're basically you're stuck in the past. The 80s. The 80s are over, man. Jeff Sessions is just trying his hardest to cling on to anything that he can to, justify his actions if his actions are going to be enforcement. Because, basically, let's face it, people, the Republicans are always the party for law and order. They're the party that the police side with. They're the party that the police vote for. They're the party that, let's face it, the police unions are basically Republicans. And when it comes to the Republic or the police, they're the ones that are pushing the politicians around, and the prison lobbyists. Obviously, they're pushing them around too, because they just got rid of Obama's whatever it was on, ending private prison funding from the federal government eventually. Well, they didn't like that, so then they're also like, well, we want to continue to get paid to put asses in cells. And one of the ways we do that effectively is marijuana. So I don't know what you're talking about, Sessions. you should have learned your lesson that prohibition doesn't do anything but it creates a black market. And then it's dangerous. Now you got the police trying to play cops and robbers with people selling marijuana, and you got people selling marijuana turning into gangsters and doing stupid shit like you're talking about, running into drug debts and then getting violent about it.
Best view is that we don't need to be legalizing marijuana, and we
Yes,
need
we
to
do.
crack down more effectively on heroin.
When he says crack down more effectively on heroin, I don't have any idea what he's talking about there. They don't crack down on heroin as it is. Hell, our U.S. Armed Forces are stationed in Afghanistan, in case you forgot. We've been there for like 15 or so more years. And the only justified reason that anybody has as to why we're there is to protect the heroin crops. So what kind of cracking down are you doing on heroin? We haven't seen any crackdown on any kind on heroin. But if you want to get rid of the gateway drug to heroin, crack down on pharmaceutical companies dumping like dump truck loads full of pills on every town in this country. I mean, they at this time they prescribe enough opiates so that everybody in this country could have 4 doses a day. Everybody in this country don't take opiates, but yet there's that many of them prescribed every year in this country now. We have that big of an opioid problem. And you're sitting here talking shit about marijuana where nobody's addicted to it. You don't have anybody at some kind of addiction center freaking out because they need to get clean from marijuana. You don't have, people dying from overdoses of marijuana. None of that happens. You have a problem with people getting arrested for marijuana. That's the only problem you have. So Sessions, I don't know where he's going with this, but I guess we'll have to wait and find out. One thing that's happened, though, is that you probably get inundated with the stock market, information about weed stocks or pot stocks or whatever fancy wording they want to use. And they're always trying to tell you what's the good, you can get in on the stock game here and, start out with, just $50 and be a millionaire and eventually blah, blah, blah. Well, the thing about it is you're going to ride the waves of the political environment and what's going on with states legalizing marijuana. So currently right now, stocks are valued at a certain amount depending on how much business they're doing or what their business plans for the future are. And what you got to think about is there's only 8 states in D.C. right now that have marijuana legalized for recreational use. 28 states have medical marijuana, but the recreational is where it's at. That's where that's the water that's going to rise all the boats. That's the rising tide that's going to rise all the boats up. So if recreational blows up and it's legalized all 50 states, yeah, these stocks that you invested $50 in today probably will be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. You never know, because some of them are penny stocks. But you got to look at what the company's doing. If it's somebody that just does building leasing and stuff like that, there's probably a certain threshold where that stock's going to get. And you can kind of gauge that by looking at how many what the volume of stocks that they have, what they're trading volume in. What a big deal here is headlines. Headlines are everything. And this headline is that Trump is a buzzkill for pot stocks. And it basically is talking about, the Sessions and Spicer out there making all that noise. All of a sudden, a bunch of these marijuana stocks have seen sharp drops. And I was kind of looking at these stocks too because I have people asking me all the time, what are some good marijuana stocks to look at? And I told everybody that I talk to, I say, well, don't pay attention to the volatility of them right now because there is a lot going on. But you can find times when something happens and everything takes a hit and they're going to be as low as they're going to get. And that just happened. If you want to buy some of these stocks, right now would be a good time. We have innovative Industrial Proprieties, which buys buildings and leases them to growers of medical marijuana, has dropped every day since the announcements by Spicer, totaling 8% almost. And there's a 5% drop on Friday, which was, the day after basically the press conference happened. Boom, all the stocks kind of took a hit. Weed Inc. plunged 10%, as did Mass Roots, which plunged 15%. And you're thinking, well, it was at $1, and then it went down to 85 cents. If I was a smart investor, I would buy the hell out of that 85 cents on Mass Roots, because it's gonna go farther than $1. I mean, come on. When it was at $1, people were still buying a lot of it. So, if you can get in when things like this happen, I don't see anybody that could tell you that investing in any of these stocks would be a bad idea. They'd have to be crazy to say it. When you start seeing the raids happen, that's when the stocks will dip down, and then you'll see the reports of the counter raid happening thing, whatever happens. And what's that going to look like? If a raid happens, unlike a normal raid that normally happens, you're going to get a lot of focus on it from the media. You're going to get people talking about it in places like me. And basically the internet's going to be on fire about it if it's a legitimate marijuana business and they're not breaking any laws in their state. And that's going to be one of the first things that the people wanting information about it, the press, the community at large is going to be like, well, were they following the law? Say like it happened in Colorado. Were they doing everything legitimate according to Colorado's law? And if they were, yeah, it's going to be bad for the Trump team. And it's going to be good for the stocks, because after they take that little dip, because everybody's like, oh no, a raid, and then the blowback happens, then you'll see people still operating, and this kind of thing's never happened before. So, the stocks are gonna do some. It's gonna be a rough ride. They're gonna do some dips and some hills and valleys. But I would have to say, and I'm not giving anybody any stock advice here, and I don't really know, but I am gonna say that when you see something like this happen, and you see numbers like 5%, 10%, 8% drops, you should probably buy those, because they're going to go back to where they were, and you already look at it like there's your margin, 8%, 10%, 5%, and that's where they were. And this is early in the game. This is day zero still on investing on pot stocks. So, and as bad as Trump is, think about 4 years down the road. If you're a long-term investor, big deal. Trump what? The more noise he makes and the dumber he gets at doing this crap, in 4 years, the more of chance is likely that he's out of there. So maybe he doesn't do too much, and then on the second term they go on a little bit more of a crackdown or whatever. Like 8 years, somebody else comes along. This marijuana being illegal thing isn't gonna be going on for a whole lot longer, guys. So that's all we got there. Now, here's an update to last week's story about Georgia's so-called medical marijuana expansion. This article tells you that, they expanded medical marijuana. Well, they really didn't. All they did is add autism to it. And, they added the fact that if you come in from another state that allows the similarly low THC cannabis oil, then you can have the oil in Georgia. It still doesn't tell you how you get the oil to Georgia, and it's still, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So in essence, they did keep in there that they're going to lower the maximum allowable amount of THC to 3% in an attempt to keep in, with the other states that have this low THC oil law. Nothing really compassionate going on here. Just a bunch of it just moved through. Who knows if it's going to pass still or not? But yeah, not very cool that that they're calling this some kind of expansion when it really isn't. I mean, just the fact that they're cutting the THC in half is that's not an expansion. That's reeling it in tighter, making people like it's terrible. So we have some PolitiFact and some Snopes coming in about some of the things that's going on around this Trump thing. So during Trump campaign, he pledged to leave marijuana legalization up to the states, and this is I think this is PolitiFact, to be honest. Yes, this is PolitiFact, and they give it a 100% green arrow true on PolitiFact's scale. Trump administration signaled that it would crack down on recreational marijuana. And then you have Spicer talking about recreational marijuana and other drugs of that nature, which I don't know what he's talking about with that. Maybe he's talking about drugs that are only used for recreation or something, or drugs that are illegal on the Schedule 1 type deal. Well, Quinnipiac poll, we all heard about that. 71% of voters said that the government should not interfere with states that passed legalized marijuana. And, during the campaign, he said, we'll just go through it. The first time, July 29th, 2016. Well, I don't know. This ain't the first time. This is the most recent occurrence where he said, quote, I wouldn't do that using federal authority to shut down recreational marijuana. No, I wouldn't do that. I think it's up to the states. Yeah, I'm a states person. I think it should be up to the states. Absolutely. And then in a radio interview on WWJ News Radio 950 in Michigan on March 8th, 2016, Trump said, I think it certainly has to be a state. I have not smoked it. It's got to be a state decision. I do like it, from a medical standpoint. It does do pretty good things. But from the other standpoint, I think it should be up to the states. And then you might have heard that at the beginning of this video, at the beginning of this podcast, where I went ahead and played this video, where he said the marijuana thing is such a big thing. And I think medical should happen, right? Do we agree? I think so. And I really believe we should leave it up to the states. I think it should be a state situation. And I believe that the legalization of marijuana, other than medical use, because I think medical, I know people that are very, very sick, and for whatever reason, the marijuana really helps them. But in terms of marijuana and legalization, I think that should be a state issue, state by state. One of the things about that statement is that I don't think the federal government even has the authority to have marijuana, any drugs really, have this drug war. Like, they don't have the authority to basically tell people that they can't use something in their spare time, like marijuana, for example. I don't know. Maybe. I've heard that thrown around. Other than that, in an interview on Fox on February 11th, 2016, Bill O'Reilly described Colorado's experience legalizing pot as leading to all of the dealers, all of the pushers are going to Colorado, loading up on free pot because it's legal, not free, legal, and then zooming around the country selling it. Does that concern you? And Trump said he favors, basically, when he asked that, he said, yes, that does concern him. He said he favors medical marijuana 100%. But when you're talking about with recreational marijuana, perhaps not. It's causing a lot of problems out there. He didn't bring up the states' rights in that particular interview with Bill O'Reilly. I think that's about it here. We're going to rewind way back to April of 1990 in an article in the Sarasota Herald Tribune. Trump said the United States should legalize drugs and use the money collected to educate the public on the dangers of drug use. We're losing badly the war on drugs, Trump said at the time, according to the article. You have to legalize drugs to win that war. You have to take the profit away from the drug czars. Now, it sounds to me like the farther you go back in the timeline, the more Trump is on point with his talking points as far as like knowing what he's talking about and not taking the right-wing Republican conservative line, which is always more prohibition and ignore science and reality, and who cares if 71% of your voters tell you not to do it anyway. Because as always, the Republicans are, they're beholden to the donors. They really don't care what you say. They are going to say whatever they have to get their donors' agenda through. That's basically it for that one. Like I said, PolitiFact, true. What else do we got on this? Well, we have that fact check. So, Snopes. I'm not a big fan of Snopes, but once in a while they package something up pretty nice and neatly for you. And I'm just going to go over this real fast because I don't know if I trust it. To be honest, I did read through it. I skimmed over it. So is marijuana legalization linked to increased violent crime? That's, the new talking point on the Jeff Sessions talking tour. The claim is that there's a demonstrable link between marijuana legalization and an increase in violent crime. And Snopes gives that a false rating. I got to give that a fucking what the hell kind of rating, because what does that even, how do you get there? How does legalizing marijuana cause any kind of violent crime at all? Or, I don't know, man. Just, there's nowhere. I mean, I remember what Sessions said. He said something about the drug debt. Yeah, here we go. You can't sue somebody for a drug debt. The only way you get your money is through strong arm tactics. And violence tends to follow that. Well, there's two different claims that require investigation. First, the specific information that Sessions attributes to Nebraska Attorney General Peterson regarding more violence around marijuana than one would think as a result of legalization in neighboring Colorado. The second is that there exists a broad association between marijuana legalization and violent crime. Both claims lack credible data to support these assertions. And in fact, the second one is just complete nonsense, to be honest. Now, if you wanted to say that legalization of marijuana had a broad association with violent crime, we're talking about this, again, the neighboring state saying that people came in with marijuana, and I'm going to put together that with the Jeff Sessions, and then they fronted a bunch of weed to a bunch of people. And then some of these people couldn't pay off their debts, so the dealer had to come back and strong arm the money out of them. Does that sound about what their narrative they're trying to push? Well, there's no fucking evidence for any of that shit. All right. And this is, in 2014, Oklahoma and Nebraska filed a motion for permission from the Supreme Court to sue the state of Colorado over damages they allege to have suffered after the legalization of recreational marijuana. And there's nothing. There's nothing in here about any violence that was caused because of that legalization. They never claimed any of that. All right, now, the filing alleges a number of damages suffered by the two neighboring states, which are best summarized in the written congressional testimony provided by Nebraska Attorney General Peterson to the United States Caucus on International Narcotics Council on 5th of April 2016 after his state's attempt to sue Colorado was halted by the Supreme Court. The diversion of marijuana into my state has been fierce. I have learned from consulting with law enforcement officials that in Nebraska's largest urban areas, that significant amounts of Colorado marijuana have been diverted into our state. As lower quality marijuana has been displaced by high potency products from Colorado, the street price has spiked. This in turn has contributed to an increase in drug trade related violence, which law enforcement ascribes to higher prices and increased currency flows. In addition to marijuana being shipped out of Colorado by mail and commercial carrier, Nebraska residents involved in the drug trade are increasingly traveling to Colorado, making large purchases, and returning to an the higher prices available on the black market at home. And Snopes says of the above claim, the only statement backed up by corroborating evidence as opposed to the more general consultation with law enforcement officials in either this document or any of the prior court filings is that marijuana from Colorado is entering Nebraska in higher numbers since legalization. No publicly available empirical evidence has been introduced to demonstrate that this Colorado marijuana has led to any increase in drug trade-related violence in Nebraska. In terms of violent crime in general, Peterson's testimony did introduce one document written by the Federal Drug Enforcement Task Force known as the Rocky Mountain High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Program, which reported on law enforcement ramifications of recreational marijuana within Colorado. Peterson used this document not to imply, but not to demonstrate such issues could carry over or already have into Nebraska. Now, the problem with that is Nebraska isn't a legal marijuana state, so the stuff that was in the Rocky Mountain High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Program was talking about when you're illegal operations that were popping up around the area, and basically they used also just general crime statistics to kind of back up their point. And these crime statistics were from Colorado, and they weren't even you could say that they were not related to marijuana or the legalization of marijuana whatsoever. They're years a year change in crime rates. Basically, there's not really much there. I mean, there's hills and valleys, ebb and flow. Sometimes some years are worse than others, and it really isn't connected to anything except for the overall economy. Usually, the worse it gets, the more violent crimes happen, of course, and the more robberies and that kind of shit. That's kind of like a no-brainer. Some of the data reported in this section is because there have been many inquiries on the particular subject, such as crime and suicides. This is not to infer that the data is due to the legalization of marijuana. And that disclaimer should definitely be included with anything that Jeff Sessions or anybody else says about violence and marijuana. So this is okay. I'm not going to read through all of these. There's a lot more to this. And they do a good job. So if you want to check it out, I'm not going to promote Snopes too often on this channel, but yeah, check it out if you want. Let me see here. Is there anything else? Well, there's an update on the Cannabis Caucus today. And basically, the update's saying that they're going to prevail over Trump's forthcoming marijuana crackdown. Okay. So, although the Trump administration has said it plans to start cracking down on the recreational cannabis trade, members of the Congressional Cannabis Caucus remain certain that their mission will prevail against forces at the Department of Justice. Well, we hope so. It was just last week that the 4-member Cannabis Caucus officially got to work on Capitol Hill. Well, there's the final numbers. I guess we only have 4 members, which is, we should definitely encourage my audience, and they should encourage people that they know to perhaps contact their congressmen, congresswoman, and maybe ask them if they would like to join the Cannabis Caucus. It used to be that if you were a politician, you couldn't even talk about marijuana or marijuana legalization. But these days, it's probably not. It's probably more of a good thing. And if you're in the Democratic Party and you're looking for some kind of a way to attract young voters, besides just lying to them and stepping on them and blaming them for everything, you might want to just start talking about marijuana legalization. All right, so they're going to educate Congress in an effort to push for major pot reforms up to and including the legalization of marijuana at the national level. However, the assembly of this group has since been shaken by reports from the White House suggesting that greater enforcement is on the horizon with respect to the way Uncle Sam deals with legal marijuana. I never suggest that anybody be complacent, but I am absolutely convinced that this is a battle in which we will prevail, Representative Earl Blumenauer of Oregon told Decode DC. In fact, Cannabis Caucus believes its role in all of this legal marijuana business is now more important than ever. Well, yeah, it is. You're our guys on the inside, as you called yourselves when I first did the first report. Referencing Spicer's comments connecting marijuana to the opioid epidemic, Representatives Blumenauer said, "It is now crucial for the coalition to meet with key members of Trump's administration in order to ensure the attitudes rooted in propaganda and alternative facts do not affect state-level policy." Quote, "It is clear that Mr. Spicer has not engaged in the research or talked to the industry people directly involved with direct experience," Blumenauer said. "This is not something that people have to speculate. There is actual evidence. In Oregon and Colorado, the two states that legalize recreational use, there hasn't been any violent upheaval, and public support continues to grow." Blumenauer also responded to Sessions' comments this week about marijuana leading to an increase in violent activity. Quote, "There's no evidence to that effect, and as a practical matter, prohibition has failed to stop people from smoking marijuana. There's been 20 million people who have smoked marijuana this month. There will be. And hundreds of thousands of people will be in states where adult use isn't legal." Good point made there. There is no evidence as a practical matter that prohibition has done anything. It hasn't stopped anyone from using marijuana, especially, as they always are afraid, the teens and younger people. Although it is possible for Trump administration could soon release a new policy that forces the cannabis industry to close its doors or never open them in 8 states, Blumenauer believes the situation is not likely to end in total disaster. In fact, the lawmaker says he does not have any reason to believe that Trump or any of his cronies will send in the artillery. Quote, "Most Republicans, regardless of what they feel about cannabis, are strongly oriented towards states' rights," he said. "When we have 28 states that have acted on marijuana and 9 jurisdictions that have acted on adult use, that somehow the federal government is going to step in and overturn all of that is unlikely to the extreme." And it is pretty extreme. Like, recreational, it's still going to be a big effort, but to overturn all the medical marijuana and the recreational, the federal government doesn't have that kind of powerhouse. What are they? We're talking about the military would have to step in at this point if you're talking about that kind of enforcement. And if Colorado starts selling weed tomorrow, you better believe that there's going to be the federal government's not going to have the power, the manpower, or the money power to go after that much marijuana. After all, Sessions did say during, there is hope that the uncertainty surrounding the Justice Department's supposed plot to tear down legal weed may inspire Congress to get serious about passing concrete reforms. And like I said earlier, we have 2 bills already on the floor, one talking about respect states' rights, and the other taking marijuana off of the schedule altogether. Sessions did say during his confirmation hearing that he would follow any law passed by Congress. And that's, if they, and he did talk when they asked him about marijuana. He released a bunch of answers to some questions, and one of them said that, if you don't like the way that the laws are written, you have to talk to the Congress about that. Quote, I think one of the obvious concerns in that the United States Congress made the possession of marijuana in every state and distribution of it an illegal act, Sessions said. So if we need to, and if it's something that is not desired any longer, Congress should pass a law to change the rule. It's not so much the Attorney General's job to decide what laws to enforce. We should do our job and enforce laws effectively as we are able. Now, the last sentence is important too, because the federal government or any other police agency is not going to be able to do their job effectively if it's, something that really don't need enforcement, like our marijuana is something that's so hard to, prohibition is such a hard thing to accomplish. There's no way you're going to shut everything down. How do I know that? Well, I mean, you tried it for 80 years. It's still thriving, if not, in the height of prohibition, it was still, you could still buy marijuana anywhere, sell it pretty much anywhere. While it's easy to blame the cannabis community, or it's easy for the cannabis community to blame President Trump and AG Sessions for being potential saboteurs in this hairy debacle, really it is Congress that is to blame for failing to put a federal marijuana law on the books when there was a chance of it being supported by the former President Obama. I argue that maybe Obama wouldn't have been that supportive of it. Obviously, that is a good argument. That, hey, Congress, wake up! What are you doing? How come this isn't something you've been working on? I think it is something they've been working on. Bernie Sanders has been working on this. I've seen stuff that Bernie Sanders has put together for decriminalizing or legalizing marijuana in one form or another all the way back to 2013 in the United States government. So basically, there you go. The Cannabis Caucus, another one of our only hopes out there to help us, maybe save us from this Trump nightmare. One more thing about this, I think. Yes. All right. Now, the history on marijuana lobbies that I know of is, you have NORML, and then NORML, they've been around since like the early 70s, and then they broke apart. They didn't really break apart, but all the states got evolved into having their own NORML. Most states, I'm not sure if all states have a NORML branch. So marijuana lobby grows as legalization spreads throughout the country. Now you have all kinds of lobbies because there's a industry forming around legalized marijuana and medical marijuana as well. So there's definitely people interested in talking to the government, and that's what lobbyists do, is they try to get laws passed that will favor their their industry. And in this case, the industry is marijuana. As the cannabis legalization movement continues to score victories across the country, the number of lobbyists for the industry continues to grow. They will descend May 16th and 17th on Washington to speak with members of Congress about changing federal laws on marijuana. That, of course, includes legalization at the federal level, but also banking rules that keep banks from providing services to cannabis businesses. The event, called the Cannabis Industry Lobby Days, is sponsored by the National Cannabis Industry Association. Founded in 2010, the association refers to itself as the only national association representing cannabis businesses at the federal level. With victories in 8 states across the country during 2016 presidential election, as well as the challenges ahead of us, we see a new administration come into the White House. Fixing federal policies is more critical than ever, according to the association website. The growth of the association tells a story of its own. At the beginning of 2013, the association had 118 members. Now that number totals more than 800. Former government regulators. The NCIA is just one sign of the growth of the industry. Many other lobbyists have formed their own consulting businesses after leaving government agencies where they once oversaw regulation of the marijuana industry. Much like other industries, from defense to financial services, former regulators now try to influence public policy. That's how America works. You work for the government, then you become a lobbyist. Ian Eisenberg, who runs the Uncle Ike's dispensary in Seattle, told The Hill. Well, I also think it's important that people that used to work in the industry are the lobbyists. And it's got to be for good reasons, not nefarious reasons. And then the revolving door that he's talking about is you work for the government and then you become a lobbyist. Maybe, or maybe it's the other way around and it's just a revolving door. You get done being a lobbyist and then you go work for the government. Get done with that, go to the lobby. I mean, Dick Cheney will show you how to do it. You also got to have a major business that you lobby for that you actually own. That helps. And maybe in this case, that's what he's talking about. But anyway, whatever. I always root against lobbyists, but really it's kind of in this situation that we find ourselves in, it looks like it's a necessary evil. And if you're in the marijuana business, you probably should start thinking about giving money to this lobby that looks out for you. And it's all a big system of bribery, obviously. So you give money to them, and then they give it to the politician that they want to answer the phone when they call them. And that's what people will tell you when they try to justify this legalized bribery. They're always like, well, it isn't like, quid pro quo or whatever. It's just, hey, if I gave you a gift and then later on down the line, a bunch of people are calling you, but they didn't give you gifts, and then you see my call come across, and since I gave you a gift, you're going to answer it. It goes way deeper than that, and I'm sure when you're talking about the lobbyists that are working against marijuana legalization, you can just let your imagination run wild as to what kind of backroom deals and handshakes are going on there. And they're the ones with the most money. I mean, you got your pharmaceutical lobby, you got your oil industry lobbyists, you got your church group lobbyists or church think tanks or whatever they are. And then, of course, you also have the pharmaceutical industry lobbyists, the alcohol lobbyists, the regular tobacco lobbyists that don't like marijuana legalization for some reason. Okay, marijuana lobbyists in Texas set aside February 22nd to come to the state capitol in Austin to support legalized medical marijuana. Much of the group that showed up were veterans seeking the right to use legal cannabis for the treatment of PTSD. So, lobbyists aren't always sinister people. They're not always out there with devious intentions. They are part of an organization called Operation Trapped, which advocates marijuana as an alternative to prescription drugs. And that's basically it for that. They talk a little bit more about the lobby, but interesting poll down here. A new poll from the University of Texas and the Texas Tribune shows that 83% of Texans support legalized marijuana for some use, while 53% support it for recreational. When they say some use, they're talking about medicinal, obviously. I mean, this mainly talking about Texas, but I could probably guess that there's a lot more than just that lobby. All right, now I've been talking about how a bunch of states, particularly on the East Coast, have been talking about legalizing marijuana for recreational use and through the legislator. I believe there was Vermont, Connecticut, New Hampshire wasn't talking about that. All right, so here's one. Marijuana appears to be a tough sell in legislature. All right, like I was just saying, Connecticut was one of those states that we were hoping might be the first to legalize marijuana legislatively. It was a long shot in the 2017 General Assembly. So with near parity among Republicans and Democrats in the House and Senate, more contentious bills seem destined for failure. few more controversial than those that would legalize the cultivation and sale of marijuana to adults 21 for non-medical use. What's so controversial about it? I don't get what's so controversial about it. I know people are, oh, yeah, it's controversial, and they're going to argue their side and the other side. But in Connecticut, it shouldn't be a big deal. You know, you have all those states around you that are about to have recreational marijuana available. Still, a tough fiscal year with a projected $1.7 billion in deficit in state budget set to take effect on July 1st. Lawmakers led by the Senate President Martin L. Looney, Democrat, New Haven, saw the potential for progressive legislation that could bring tens of millions of dollars to this in sales tax revenue. And Looney said Friday that Sessions' criticism had little effect on his decision. Quote, the issue is still going to be around, he said in the Capitol. Other states are moving in that direction. We're contemplating that at some point it could be up to a $60 million a year revenue source for us. So I think the issue is going to be with us this year or in the future. Several marijuana bills. One would create a 6% sales tax on medical cannabis. Ouch. They have several committees where all kinds of different marijuana bills are floating around, apparently. A bill that would waive registration and licensure fees for veterans applying for the medical marijuana program has a public hearing on Tuesday before the Legislative Veterans Committee. Another proposal in the Judiciary Committee would allow those convicted of possessing small amounts of marijuana before October 2015, when the state drug laws were relaxed, to apply for pistol permits, for which they are currently prohibited. And a bill filed by Representative Tom Odia, Republican from New Canaan, an opponent of marijuana legalization, would establish a threshold minimum amount of marijuana active chemicals to obtain a motor vehicle conviction for operating under the influence. Slow down, man. You don't even have legalized marijuana. Now you're already trying to say that you want to put a limit on how much THC that someone can have in their system before you give them a ticket for driving operating. You don't even recognize marijuana yet, so be careful there. All roads lead to the Judiciary Committee. In fact, the 41-member Judiciary Committee is likely to be the burying ground for most marijuana bills this session, with the three co-chairmen on the record against recreational marijuana. The vote is what it is, but we will have a public hearing on each member, and each member will make his or her own determination as to how they feel about it. Representative William Tong, Democrat, Stanford, one of the three committee chairmen, said in a Friday interview between meetings in the Legislative Office building, quote, but we don't have a bill yet. We just really have a concept. I think there are some people who feel very strongly about it either way, and there are some people who are reserving judgment until it plays out. Some people can't afford to do that, my friend, because people are getting locked up for marijuana. People still use marijuana, whether you guys legalize the recreational use of it or want to make money selling it or not. People are still out there. They're still going to use it at just about the same exact rate as if it was legalized, as numbers in Colorado bear out. So I don't know what you're doing here. You're just holding yourself back from relieving your judicial system of the burden of dealing with the marijuana problem that you call it, and B, you can make money and create jobs, because marijuana happens to be one of the boomingest new industries there ever was. I mean, they've said it was bigger than when the .com blow up happened. So I don't know what your holdup is, man. And believe me, that was the Democrat that didn't. One of the people that's not going to vote yes for it. Senator John A. Kiesel, a Republican from Enfield, co-chair of the panel, said Friday he doesn't believe there is enough support to successfully get the legalization bill out of committee. But we haven't had the public hearing, so let's see if the public hearing changes people's minds. Kiesel said, I am absolutely opposed to it. Senator Michael McClellan a Republican from Danbury, vice chairman of the committee, said Friday he remains an opponent. It's against federal law, he said. I have cousins who live in Denver, and they have seen marijuana tourism ruin their city. It's a disaster. But I was a no on medical because it's a federal law. So this guy is just a total idiot because he don't have cousins who live in Denver. I mean, he might, but they didn't see marijuana tourism ruin Denver because it didn't ruin Denver. Marijuana hasn't done any negative effects to anything to Colorado. So quit talking this bullshit. Republicans have nothing but bad things to say about marijuana. Even when they are for it, they still have just the tiptoe around it, with your arm behind your back, kicking and screaming, saying something good about it, and it usually isn't even that great. In 2012, in preparation of the medical cannabis program, the General Assembly voted to downgrade marijuana to a Schedule II drug. Federally, it is still considered an addictive Schedule I drug with no medical uses. So again, even though this state seems to be dragging its feet big time on adult use, they still are a little bit more advanced than the federal government. So that's how slow the feds are. Senator Paul Doyle, Democrat from Wethersfield, the third Judiciary Committee co-chairman, said Friday that he may vote in favor of the retail sales bill in committee. Quote, I'm opposed to it on the floor. I would help to get it out of committee, but definitely in the Senate, I would definitely vote no. And this is another Democrat. So you're liberal or you're left-leaning or whatever you want to call this Democrat crap, they're supposed to be on your side. They're supposed to be on our side. Everybody always tells me that the Democrats are so good or whatever. Well, they've never been good for legalizing marijuana. This is the kind of shit you always get from them. And lately, the whole country has been dragged to the right over the last, 15, 20 years. And ever since that's been happening, now there's like this new position that Democrats have that they're saying and using propaganda from back in the day. And it's like the more, we get dragged over to the right by the Republicans winning offices everywhere, the more we're getting more dragged to the right. The left is getting more dragged into the middle. The politicians that are Democrats are giving us the same kind of reefer madness as the Republicans used to give us. And it used to be sufficient for them, but now we're like, oh, come on, man. You guys know that that's bullshit, right? Doyle has been an active opponent. He's not just going to vote no when it hits the Senate. He's been an active opponent. Last year, as ranking member of the Regulation Review Committee, Doyle worked against the expansion of the medical marijuana program, which now has 16,580 patients and 8 dispensaries, which is roughly 1 dispensary for every 2,000 patients. So the guy is just totally, as a Democrat, he's total garbage for this whole marijuana reform situation. And what the hell is that? That's a Democrat? He worked against the expansion of medical marijuana. So no compassion whatsoever. I support the bill, said Representative Steve Statsform, Democrat from Bridgeport, one of the 18 co-sponsors of the House version of the retail sales legislation. Looney is the chief sponsor of the Senate bill. A potential cash cow or a gateway drug. Here we go. Tong and Senator Scott Franz, Republican of Greenwich, co-chairman of the Tax Writing, Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee, said that the chief selling point for recreational marijuana is a potential tax revenue. It's just another motive to reject it. What? They're doing all this for all the wrong reasons. They're trying to raise revenue. They're ignoring the social costs of what I consider to be a gateway drug. Well, that's all fine and dandy that you consider it to be a gateway drug, but most of the federal government and state government officials that study these things don't agree with that. I'm pretty convinced that it's a drug that's a lot more evil than people think it is. Why? How can you say something like that? That statement is false on its face. Because if people don't really think it's that evil, then it's not that evil by definition. You can't say that you're convinced that it's something that most people say it ain't. You just can't do it. All right, with the change of the chemical makeup of that drug today as compared to 25, 35 years ago, it's more addictive, I imagine, and it also raises one's curiosity about other forms of drugs that might even be more dangerous. Huh? I have no idea what he's talking about, but marijuana is not dangerous, as we've more than seen and proven by the decades and centuries that go by, millennia, where nobody's ever died from it. This whole addictive thing and, gateway shit, all that's been proven to be bullshit. So, you can keep talking like this and your audience is going to look at you. Some of them are going to be looking at you like, what in the fuck did he just say? This guy's an idiot. Don't he have Google? And then the 3 or 4 like 80-year-old people are going to be like, yes, just stop those kids from smoking that marijuana, devil's grass, or whatever the fuck. Quote, the money is the wrong reason to do it, Tong said. I feel very strongly about that. If you want to have a substantive discussion about the merits of whether it makes sense for us as a policy of the state, let's do that. Well, that's what they're doing, dude. How stupid. And then he said, which I think we're going to do. And that's what they are doing. And you said you're not voting for it, though. But I think the money is the wrong reason to do it. The money isn't the reason to do it. That's just another added bonus. But yeah, you're a Republican, so since when did they allow you to take the position that money isn't a reason to make your mind up? It seems to be like why you guys say that you do all the shit you do. Like, oh, we can't afford that, we can't do this, we got to do this, or that's going to happen. And that's just the way it is. And, Republicans are crazy sometimes, but this marijuana issue is really showing them to be the idiots that they really are. Okay, well, we got North Carolina and South Carolina has some action on medical marijuana. First, we'll go to South Carolina, where medical marijuana could be legal if advancing proposal becomes law. House panel on Tuesday advanced a bill that seeks to legalize the use of marijuana for medicinal purposes over the objections of South Carolina's top cop and other law enforcement representatives. Oh, the law enforcement people, boy, they are the ones that want to keep marijuana illegal. I mean, it's most of the work they do, I'm assuming, that judging by how desperate they are to make sure it stays illegal. But as I've said before, I think more so it's that they can, when they find marijuana on somebody, they instantly can take away all your rights. And they don't want to see that power go away or diminish. The hearing, which was contentious at times, lasted for more than 3 hours, with the majority of speakers advocating for legalization, or for the legislation. More than a dozen speakers addressed the panel. The bill calls for allowing those with debilitating or chronic diseases to buy up to 2 ounces of marijuana from a licensed dispensary if physicians certify in writing that their patients could benefit from the medical use of marijuana. Among those who spoke in favor of the bill was Becky Dansky of the Marijuana Policy Project, a national organization that advocates in favor of legally regulated medical and non-medical marijuana. Quote, parents are concerned about the dangerous drugs being prescribed to their children, and in other cases, drugs that don't work for them, Dansky said. Kathy Robertson's nephew, 11-year-old Morgan, is among those who has taken at least 7 medications to address the 3 to 5 seizures he was having a day. His seizures started when he was about 6 years old, and he spent the next 4 years as a zombie from the medications meant to make him feel better, Robertson said. But after South Carolina legalized the use of cannabidiol oil, Morgan went from 48 Morgan went 48 hours seizure free for the first time he tried it. I'm sorry again. I stuck too many words in there. So he has gone as long as 232 days without a seizure through the use of cannabidiol oil, or CBD, which has low doses of THC, the chemical associated with the psychoactive effect of marijuana. Quote, he was able to wean himself off some of the harmful pharmaceuticals, Robertson said. CBD has worked very well, but he needs more than that. State Law Enforcement Division Chief Mark Keel, however, opposed the bill. He cautioned about the difficulty of controlling marijuana once it's in the hands of a user who had it prescribed. What is he talking about anyway? That's basically saying that because people are irresponsible, we can't let them have medicine. Well, then why are you prescribing deadly opioids to people every day, and every day people are dying from them? Quote, the bill that you currently have before you is the same Pandora's box in different wrapping paper than last year's version, Keel said. Simply stated, marijuana is not medicine. He has previously opposed the use of recreational and medical marijuana, of course. Well, this guy is an idiot. This guy that's the State Law Enforcement Division Chief, Mark Keel. He is a complete idiot. He's just paid to go out there and say whatever he's got to say to scare people into not legalizing marijuana for any reason. But here, where you have, just basically saying that for medical marijuana, someone can buy 2 ounces worth of marijuana, he's calling that some kind of Pandora's box. Whatever, man. You know what? People that think like you, or whatever you do, I mean, maybe you don't believe what you're saying. You're just saying it because you're paid to do it. But whatever the case may be, you're a dying breed, and you're so far gone that everybody else in society is just, when you say shit like that, people just look at you like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? And the fact that you got a badge doesn't make it any more real. Like, that authority doesn't make your intellectual authority more applicable, especially to marijuana and marijuana laws. The fact is you will have to deal with people a lot less if marijuana is not illegal. If marijuana is legal, you don't have to worry about half the time you see someone with marijuana, it changes the whole game, Like, you could just pull someone over for a regular old traffic stop, but, oh my God, you smell marijuana, next thing you know it's a whole ordeal. And I don't know, you're fighting to keep that alive, and it's stupid. It's the stupidest thing, and it's immature. It's like cops and robbers, like you still want to play cops and robbers. It's not a Pandora's box, man. It's just 2 ounces of marijuana for people that want it for medical purposes. Have some compassion, man. And then we'll go to North Carolina. North Carolina is, both of the Carolinas really. It seems like the government there just is the experimental ground to see what kind of right-wing policies that they can push and get away with or whatever. Wow, not another one that's taken forever to load. So medical marijuana gets another look from the North Carolina legislature. State lawmakers have filed a bill that would legalize medical marijuana for medical use in North Carolina, a perennial proposal that has failed to gain traction in the past. So they basically have filed before, and like South Carolina, they get the resistance from the police and the right-wingers, and it's just, it's a tough sale in these right-wing strongholds. Longtime medical marijuana advocate Representative Kelly Alexander of Charlotte filed a bill Wednesday with support from 10 fellow Democrats, including Charlotte Rep. Rodney Moore and several Triangle representatives. Similar bills have a history of lacking support from Republicans who now control both House and Senate. But Moore said he and Alexander will continue to introduce legislation because the drug has shown promise as a therapy for cancer patients and people suffering from epilepsy. The reason why myself and Representative Alexander keep putting this bill forth is simply that some of our citizens need it, he said. So we're going to keep pushing it. The Obama administration took a hands-off approach to states that have legalized marijuana. During a Thursday press conference, White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer suggested the Department of Justice will pursue enforcement of federal law against recreational use, but not medical use. And I don't know if I like that statement, but okay. The move could signal tolerance from the Trump administration on the use of pot as a medical treatment. The drug has been legalized for medical use in 28 states, but Florida is one of the only southern states that allow it. In a 2010 Gallup poll, 70% of people surveyed favored legalizing marijuana for medical use in North Carolina. Is this in North Carolina? Oh, they're just telling you that this is up from now 93% of Americans support medical use. So that's up from 2010 when it was 70%. Next year, it's probably going to be 100%. So come on, North Carolina. How could you possibly say that you're doing anything for what your voters want you to do when you can't even, when 93% of people ask, say, yeah, medical marijuana, duh, no brainer. And you guys are still haggling over this. And Republicans, you're not going to get any of their support in North Carolina. North Carolina more pointed to bills passed in 2015 legalizing the hemp industry and allowing neurologists to dispense hemp or CBD oil to patients for treating epilepsy as a sign that there might be support for his bill. Medical marijuana is something that the public has changed its mind on, even in North Carolina, Moore said. There may well be some support for this bill on the Republican side. And it's true, in the greater public at large, about 35 or 40% of Republican voters are for legalizing for adult use. So when he's talking about there may be some support on the Republican side, it's for medical marijuana. There should be. I think the Republican number there is like 71% of Republicans say medical marijuana should be legalized. The lawmakers' Medical Cannabis Act would allow people with qualifying conditions to possess and use marijuana without fear of arrest, prosecution, or penalty. It would prohibit patients under the age of 18 from using marijuana unless they get consent from a parent who has gotten a full explanation of the potential risks and benefits of the drug. What's the risks? The bill also calls for the creation of clinical research studies at the University of North Carolina for the use of cannabis as treatment, including on safety. In 2015, a marijuana legalization bill had an hour-long hearing that ended with the legislator saying he was assaulted by a marijuana advocate, and a committee made up of both Republicans and Democrats unanimously rejected the bill. I guess that was to get back at that marijuana advocate that assaulted you. No, I don't think a marijuana advocate assaulted anyone. Anyway, Alexander sponsored a 2013 bill that proposed changing penalties for possession of certain quantities of marijuana. The law also laid out a way for first-time offenders charged with certain misdemeanor possession charges to get the offense expunged from their criminal records. The bill never made it out of committee. And that don't surprise me in North Carolina. Well, good luck with that one, North Carolina. Let's see, what else do we got? Well, we have Nevada. Maybe. And Nevada's where we just seen the first crackdown from the Trump administration, their attempt to stop the Cannabis Cup in its tracks. I don't have any idea why these pages are taking so long to load. They're like on my hard drive. So Nevada like California, is about to start a massive, now I don't know how massive Nevada is, but they're about to start up a regulated adult use marijuana marketplace. And then Jeff Sessions came out and scared everybody with his little speech on Thursday last week. And then, California's come out from the lieutenant governor all the way down to local representatives saying that they're going to look out for people. And the attorney general said he's going to make sure he's looking out for the people of California. Well, what about Nevada? And I had an article, too, about Maine. They want more clarification from Trump before they move forward with... They're hammering out their rules right now, so they want to kind of get some guidance from the people upstairs. I do believe you'll see greater enforcement of it. We all remember that. He said, I think that when you see something like the opioid addiction crisis blossoming in so many states around the country, the last thing we should be doing is encouraging people. I don't know what they're talking about. Marijuana is blah, blah, blah. Overall, very popular. Will Alder, former political director for the Question 2 campaign, said, if you look at the number of states who have legalized marijuana, they outweigh the number of states who haven't. The Trump administration has championed states' rights so far, but Alder said the federal government could intervene with Nevada's pot policy anytime. He said it could affect our medical and our recreational laws as they stand because federal law does trump state law. However, he believes there will be a big pushback if the federal government tries to enforce pot prohibition. There already is a big pushback. In Nevada, 10% of the revenue generated from recreational pot sales will fund schools, a figure the governor has already worked into the state budget. During his State of the State address in January, Governor Brian Sandoval said, quote, my budget includes one new source of revenue, a 10% excise tax on all retail sales of marijuana. Quote, the administration themselves has not actually produced a policy, an executive order, or anything we can read or look at. So right now, I'm in a state of wait and see, Adler said. And I've been saying that. That's kind of where I'm at. And I look at the enforcement, the action of trying to stop the Cannabis Cup to me, that was an enforcement action. It might just be one U.S. attorney out there in Vegas or whatever, but it is what it is. It's the federal government trying to say, hey, don't do this because we don't like it. Nevada lawmakers in the Department of Taxation are still in the process of drafting regulations for Nevada's recreational marijuana industry. If the federal government doesn't interfere, Nevada's could see retail sales of marijuana in the Silver State as soon as July. And, I mean, what are they going to do before they open the first store to interfere? The only thing I could think of that would scare them would be to come in and shut down the medical marijuana situation that they have there. Nevada Senate Majority Leader Aaron Ford issued the following statement on Friday in response to comments made by White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer. He called on the Attorney General Adam Laxalt to defend Nevada's marijuana laws. Quote, the Attorney General must make it immediately clear that he will vigorously defend Nevada's recreational marijuana laws from federal overreach. Not only did voters overwhelmingly vote to approve the legalization of recreational marijuana, the government's proposed education budget depends on tax revenue from recreational marijuana sales. Any action by the Trump administration would be an insult to Nevada voters and would pick the pockets of Nevada students. Mr. Laxalt was never shy about taking action against the federal government under the previous administration. He must show the same consistency in taking on President Trump's overzealous attack on the will of Nevada voters. Good luck out there in Nevada, and I hope you move forward as planned with your marijuana program. Let's see. Oregon, local news. Oregon, they've had some town hall meetings. And there's, you've heard about these town hall meetings around the country, getting loud, people wanting to know what's going on with their health care, with the environment, with banking regulations getting removed. It seems like the Trump administration's coming in with a heavy hammer and swinging it at just about everything that there was. And what about marijuana? So, let's see. We got a light rail over here. I'm sorry I did not read this very much the first time. Okay, several constituents wanted to talk about recreational marijuana after the White House signaled that the Trump administration is likely to crack down on states that have legalized recreational marijuana. Oregon is one such state. Federally, marijuana is a Schedule I narcotic, same category as heroin. Burdick co-chairs the legislators' Joint Committee on Marijuana's Regulation. The name almost always gets a laugh from town hall crowds, the Joint Committee on Marijuana Regulation, and said Oregon made efforts to meet the criteria in the Cole Memorandum, a 2013 memo from Deputy Attorney James Cole that said, in essence, U.S. attorneys should not put an emphasis on processing marijuana cases. Oregon did that, Burdick says, by addressing efforts to weaken the black market for marijuana, keeping the drug away from children, and by tracking sales. Our congressional delegation is looking at ways to unschedule marijuana, Burdick said, reducing its classification from Schedule I to a lesser category. Legislators are also looking at bolstering a 10th Amendment challenge to any actions from President Trump's Justice Department. The 10th Amendment of the Constitution says that powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution are reserved to the states. So basically, people are at the town halls asking their representatives when they're coming in from D.C. is, what are you going to do? This is, you can't leave us out here to dry. As far as we're concerned, this is legal. Maybe. I think this is the one we already did. Oops. Terrible planning, guys. Sorry. Okay, this is New Mexico. New Mexico had some aspirations to legalize marijuana legislatively, but it died in committee. In the House Business and Industry Committee, that sounds corrupt as all hell. House Bill 89, which would have established a regulatory framework for legal production, processing, and sales of marijuana and industrial hemp, was tabled following the debate of about 2.5 hours in committee. Quote, I think a lot of this is still just this reefer madness mentality that is just bad. Even if we're seeing over time in Colorado, Oregon, Washington, and Alaska, and now there are going to be 4 other states that are doing this, that it works, said Representative Bill McCalmley, the bill's sponsor, on his nightly Facebook report. McCamley said it is estimated that legalization could create 11,000 new jobs in the first year and add more than 44 million. I don't know what just happened. Sorry about all these troubles with the website or these web pages. I will remember to make sure that these are pre-opened and definitely not rely on, I don't know what's going on here. Never seen web pages that took this long to open locally. I don't even know what's going on. I believe it's probably the ads. I should have just used the ad blocker when I first downloaded them. New computer, sorry. Next time I'll think about these things. So we were over here talking about jobs and $44 million to the state coffers in tax revenue. This would be the third year that McCamley has introduced legislation to legalize marijuana, but he said this was the first time the effort was taken seriously. His previous two bills never even got a hearing. So that should tell you something there. I mean, this is New Mexico. At least, they're making some progress. And I think a lot of it has to do with the Trump administration looking like a threat to legalize marijuana. So people are scrambling around and they want to have the conversation, The Department of Public Safety noted in imposing the bill that there is no simple means for testing drivers for marijuana intoxication as there is for alcohol. That's because it's not a problem like alcohol. Alcohol, people are dying every day from drunk driving accidents. The danger to New Mexico's citizens emanating from a whole new category of legalized substance by which individuals could end up driving impaired cannot be overstated, DPS said in commenting on the bill. Now, come on. There's already people smoking marijuana. Always. No matter what. You act like legalizing a substance is going to make it so there's people that weren't smoking it. Now they are. That's just not the case. People admit that they smoke it once it's legalized, but as far as like a massive amount of new users coming into the fold, that just hasn't been seen in any of the states that have legalized recreational use, any of the countries that have legalized recreational use, any of that. And here we go again. Because of the ad that's on this article, I can't seem to keep it open, so I'm just going to kill it. But you can look into that. New Mexico trying to legalize marijuana, but nope, it died in committee. Would have been a great idea. But I guess my whole point with that article was that, like they said, this never made it to committee before. Now that Trump's around and Sessions is out there with his voodoo dolls, people want to talk about this. People want to know where their constituents stand. People want to know what kind of, what marijuana legalization might look like legislatively in their area, in their neck of the woods. Finally, since I'm having all this technical difficulty, I'm going to end today on a sour note, I guess. Arkansas panel advances medical pot smoking and edibles ban. And earlier in the day, they also advanced, or I believe it was the bill to delay the medical marijuana program got not passed. So that didn't pass. Okay, so a Senate committee advanced bills to change medical marijuana law approved by voters in November by banning smoking medical marijuana and the selling of food or drinks containing the drug. But an effort to halt the start of the program until the drug is legalized nationwide failed. The Committee on Public Health, Welfare, and Labor on Wednesday endorsed and sent to the full Senate bills banning the smoking, eating, and or drinking of marijuana, but allowing patient or designated caregiver to incorporate marijuana into food or drink for medicinal use. The smoking bill was proposed by Senator Jason Rapert. Rapert said allowing the smoking of marijuana would harm public health. Under the measure, smoking medical marijuana wouldn't be allowed in any location in the state. Universally, in public health community, people will tell you you should not smoke. Yeah, but they're talking about cigarettes because, like you always tell us with studies, you don't have a study that proves that smoking marijuana is dangerous. You don't have a single study that says anything about that. So you can't say that. Just like I can't say that it's completely safe or that it negates the negative effects of smoking cigarettes. Some who argued before the panel for the legislation said allowing the smoking of marijuana could lead to recreational use. Oh, come on, man. Who cares? All right? Popping open a orange bottle of opioids could lead to heroin addiction. You don't do nothing about that, though. Melissa Foltz with the Drug Policy Education Group told the committee she understands people's concern about smoking, but that being able to smoke medical marijuana is beneficial for some patients who need immediate relief. Yeah, that's why you smoke it, because you need to feel better right now. Rapert's other bill, a proposal to deny implementation of medical marijuana in Arkansas until the federal government legalizes marijuana use, failed for lack of a motion. Rapert is not a member of the public committee. Arkansas Surgeon General Gregory Bledsoe spoke to the panel about his personal position as a physician on State Senate Gary Stubblefield's edible marijuana bill. He spoke in favor of the measure, citing the levels of THC, the psychoactive chemical in marijuana, in edibles and packaging that could possibly be enticing to children. That's why you make laws that say you have to put a label on there that tells you how much THC concentration, how much THC is in each edible, and you also have to make the packaging so it's not enticing to children. You can make that a law instead of just saying no edibles. You guys are just being dicks at this point. It's been very difficult to determine the THC level in some of these products, Bledsoe said. Nuh-uh, you send it to a lab and they tell you exactly what's in it, or while you're making it, you can do math. It's not that hard to do math to figure out how much THC is in a edible. The House Rules Committee advanced a bill Wednesday that would levy a 4% tax on the sale of medical marijuana in the state. That's okay. You're not going to make any money because no one's going to buy this garbage. And no one's going to invest millions of dollars on a grow facility or a dispensary if you're not going to let them sell any products that people are actually going to want to buy. One of the big sellers happens to be smokable and edible marijuana. Matter of fact, that's the number 1 and 2 biggest sellers. So you are basically, once again, cutting the legs right off your medical marijuana bill. This law is going to basically be, it's going to pass and then it's going to come, deadlines are going to come and go. No one's ever going to do anything. You know, does this thing even protect you at all? No, not really. It doesn't protect you if you get caught smoking marijuana and you say you're using it for medicinal purposes. They can look at this and say, "Oh, no, you're not," because we don't allow that here. The House Rules Committee, okay, any changes to the state's medical marijuana program would require at least a 2/3 vote in the House and Senate, which is why you don't do these amendments, these constitutional amendments, especially when you have Republicans making them. They always make them so they're just impossible to work. And since we're talking about Arkansas, you might as well go over their finalized regulations that they hammered out, the rules that they said. So you basically, this is the rules governing their program. And these have been finalized, so I don't know what that means. Oh, I don't know if they're finalized or this is the final draft. They're not, the public comments is not open for this. The definition's pretty simple. They will have this medical marijuana commission. Here they, I guess they offer a list of people of excluded felony offenses, and that's probably has to do with getting involved in the this medical marijuana business that they're talking about opening here. Now, here's your qualifying medical conditions: cancer, glaucoma, positive status for a human immunodeficiency virus, acquired immune deficiency syndrome, hepatitis C, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, Tourette's syndrome, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, post-traumatic stress disorder, severe arthritis, fibromyalgia, Alzheimer's disease, and treatment of these conditions. B, a chronic or debilitating disease or a medical condition or its treatment that produces one or more of the following. And, it doesn't have anything broad in there, like it doesn't just say chronic pain, but it does have a lot of things that are painful. It should just say chronic pain. And then at the end, they have the C, any other medical condition, or its treatment approved by the department pursuant to these rules and the amendment. And then they have a definition for usable marijuana, which means stalks, seeds, roots, dried leaves, flowers, oils, vapors, waxes, or any other portion of the marijuana plant or mixture or preparation thereof. Usable marijuana does not include the weight of the ingredient that is combined with it. Okay, so they have these licenses for all these facilities. And then they have rules to get the licenses, and then they say that you shall have interest in more than one. You can't have like a dispensary and a facility at the same time. Oh, and you can't have more than one of them at the same time. I think they had somebody trying to pass a law that says you could have more than one of them. I don't know what happened with that. I don't think it matters. Just getting one of these is crazy hard. So applications will be accepted for cultivation facility license beginning 10 days after the date of publication of the legal notice by the commission, and no applications will be accepted after 90 days. Get ready for this application crap. You have to be 21 years or older, a current resident of the state of Arkansas, or have been a resident for 7 years, have not previously held a license for a cultivation facility or dispensary that has been revoked, has no ownership in any other cultivation facility in the state of Arkansas, has not been convicted of any excluded felony offenses, and in that, drug offenses were not listed. If possessing a professional license that is licensed in good standing, has no outstanding tax delinquencies owed to the state of Arkansas. If you're applying on behalf of an entity, the individual shall be legally authorized to submit an application on behalf of the entity, shall serve as the primary point of contact with the commission, shall submit sufficient proof that the entity has no power or no owner, board member, or office under the age of 21. The individual or individuals owning at least a total of 60% interest in the entity have been residents of Arkansas for 7 consecutive years prior to the application date. And this goes back to this thing where they want to have 60% interest in the marijuana business is going to go to Arkansas residents. I don't know how that's even possible, or I don't even know what that even means. The residents have 60% stake. So they're just trying to say that they don't want to have outside people coming in and starting up businesses, and they say it in more than one way. And yeah, it's really hard to imagine anybody wanting to get any of these licenses, especially after they just said that you can't smoke or eat marijuana. And plus, applicants shall provide proof of assets or surety bond in the amount of $1 million and proof of at least $500,000 in liquid assets. Applicants shall provide a complete application with responses for each required item. And yeah, obviously you got to prove that you lived in. It's just all this crap telling you what passes as proof. So there you have that. You got to be able to whip out a bond for $1 million and have, provable liquidity of $500,000. And of course, you got to do background checks and all this other crap. Background check, everybody involved. Application fee is $15,000 for a cultivation license. And if you, for some reason, you don't get picked or your application, you failed, you get $7,500 of the fee shall be refunded to the applicant. That's only half. Who can afford that? I don't know. And then it tells you about what they got to do once they get the application fee. And you also have to prove some other stuff. The ability to operate a business, including but not limited to education, knowledge, and experience with regulated industries, agriculture or horticulture, commercial manufacturing, creating or implementing a business plan, including timeline for opening a business, creating and implementing a financial plan, secure inventory tracking control, the cultivation, production of marijuana, the owning and managing of a business require 24-hour security, monitoring, owning, managing a business has not had its business license revoked, and blah blah blah. It's like they want you to know everything and be everything and do everything, or you can't run this marijuana facility. You know, they don't make you do all this shit to get just any other license. Just crazy. Ability to comply with security requirements as described in the rules and regulations of the Arkansas Alcoholic Beverage Control Division. So they're likening it to alcohol. Yeah, and they want a lot of the regulations of the Alcohol and Beverage Control Division to just spill over and say, well, you got to prove that you can comply with what the alcohol people have to comply with. And you got to have effective control against the diversion of marijuana and marijuana products. Isn't that what all this other stuff was above it? So a lot of this is just rewording and beating it into your head like a lecture. Like, hey, you young whippersnapper, if you're going to do this, you're going to do it like this. And they're tripping you up on every little thing they possibly can. Proof of financial stability and access to financial resources. They didn't ask Donald Trump any of that shit before he got a business loan from somebody else after he already owed everybody else business loan money. This is all just a way over the top, application and vetting process that, basically they don't ask of anybody else. Anybody. Some of it is assuming that you're just some idiot off the street that's just never even tried to run a business, which shouldn't be a thing, man. They should encourage new people to get involved with these businesses. And then you have merit to evaluate applications. I don't know. It's just a bunch of other stupid little things that they can nitpick you on. Local ownership percentage. Each merit criterion will be worth a number of points. So it's basically like, oh, you got this merit and that merit. We're going to give you points. And I guess later on it's for you to say, hey, I had more points than that guy. How come he got it and not me? It's just, this is all just stupid. They're assuming so much. Like, they're thinking if you build it, they will come. But if you build something that is this toxic, nobody's going to touch it. No one's going to attempt it. Oh, man. Licensing fee and issuance of license. So this is your licensing fee for your cultivation facility, $100,000. I made a video about this before. So not only do you got to prove that you have $1 million somehow, but you also have to prove you have $500,000 in liquidity and whip out $100,000 to pay for your licensing fee. It's ridiculous, and it's unbelievable. Oh, man. And within 7 days of receiving written notice of the selection from the commission, the selection applicant shall submit to the commission a performance bond in the amount of $500,000. The bond shall be maintained until the cultivation facility files its first required sales tax report. So they don't even trust you to pay your freaking bills. They're like, put up a bond just in case you don't pay your bills. And that's a $500,000. That's way more than you're ever going to rack up in taxes, I think. I don't know. Maybe they're acting like these are going to be billion-dollar businesses. All right, the license shall be valid for 1 year unless the license is blah, 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 or, whatever. License renewal and process fee. Once again, $100,000. Cultivation facility licensee whose license is not renewed shall cease all operations immediately upon expiration of the license and return the license to the commission. That's basically it. I think there's another thing in here for dispensary licenses. I don't know. Yeah, there's some rules and stuff. 3,000 feet from a public or private school, church, daycare existing before the date of cultivation facility transfer application pursuant to the Arkansas Medical Marijuana Amendment of 2016. That's farther than any other distance from those mentioned things that I've ever heard of. And in certain places that might put that out of, right out of your town. You might not be able to have that. Let's see. Is there anything else with this? I'm talking right now to people that are thinking about. You live in Arkansas and you're thinking, oh, cool, we finally got this medical marijuana thing. Nobody is going to be able to grow marijuana except for somebody that's really rich. I don't know who the hell this is. It's going to come in here, have all this money, take the chance that they're going to make money when the business plan tells you that you can't even make the two products that people want the most. It just doesn't make any sense. It does. It makes a lot of sense if what you're trying to do is just completely kneecap the program and make it so that it's totally unworkable and that nobody's even going to attempt to run one of these businesses. You can't even write a business plan that would, come out anywhere but in the red. And I think it was in Indiana where they invested millions of dollars trying to run a medical marijuana program where all they made is products other than products that you could smoke or products that you could, vaporize or medibles. None of that was allowed, so the only thing you could get was these tinctures and salves and, stuff like that. Nobody wanted them. Nobody bought them. The businesses are losing all that money. And then here we have the dispensary. Dispensary license shall include an application fee of $7,500. And of course, you can get half of that back if you get churned down. Then we have the licensing fee, which is $25,000 in certified funds. And again, you must submit a performance bond, this time in the amount of $100,000. And the bond must be maintained until cultivating dispensary files its first application for renewal of license. Now, this is a cultivating dispensary. There's also the non-cultivating dispensary. The cultivating dispensary can grow their own marijuana, and then there's dispensaries that don't grow their own, and that has a dispensary license fee of $2,500. I don't know about the bond on that one. Oh, here it is. Nope. $10,000 annual fee. So there it is. That was the Arkansas's rules and regulations on their medical marijuana program. Total disaster. This thing is not going to succeed. I don't know how you guys get out of this, but it's terrible. That's all I got for this week, guys. And because of all the technical problems that I had, I'm just going to just end it here without even final thoughts or anything. But if you want my final opinion on the Trump administration and what they're all about, I really don't have any idea. I'm just as perplexed, and I have more questions now than the first time we heard a peep. Since Sean Spicer's little press briefing last week, basically what I have seen is positive. It's very positive. I've seen news outlets pouring articles out left and right, and I'm seeing, activists coming out of the woodworks wondering what's going on. I've seen politicians scrambling to get legislation together or to talk to people about what is going on. And I think all that's positive. And Trump's administration, Trump's minions, whatever you want to say, putting that out there basically invigorated the movement. And if we didn't have an administration that was gonna go, gonna threaten the industry, if it was just something like Hillary was president and we kind of went along business as usual, status quo, and didn't really, no one had any challenges to the recreational marijuana laws or the Cole memo or any of that other stuff, nobody would be talking about it. And I think legislatively speaking and grassroots speaking, everybody would be more relaxed and complacent, and there wouldn't be a big scramble to do these marijuana law reforms. But that's all I got. The Daily Dope Show. You can find my channel on YouTube if you didn't know where it was already by seeing this video. Subscribe. I do clips a lot of clips daily, and sometimes I do a weekly. And that's what this is here. Have a good day.